channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Today is Tuesday, and as promised, I have a thrift flip for you guys. I grabbed a couple more items out of my stash and gave them both a makeover, and I did another version of the pumpkin block set. So I hope you guys like today's projects, and without further ado, let's get to them. My first project is another set of pillar holders. I really like having all the different colors of pillar holders in my decor just so that I can create a vignette. They make a nice accessory for those. Before I could get started painting them, I needed to remove those little pokey things on the top. Not sure what exactly they're called, but I like to use my pillars a lot of the time as risers rather than for candles, and so those had to go. And then I went ahead and grabbed my Rustoleum 2X spray in the color Espresso to give these a nice dark base coat for me to start with. Now for these, I decided once my spray paint was dry to go ahead and go over them with 2 coats of Bohemian blue by DIY. Now, admittedly, blue is usually not at the top of my list for colors that I choose. I like blue, but it's definitely always kind of been on the back burner for me for whatever reason. But I really, really like this color a lot, and I find that it blends so well with spring, summer, and fall decor, and so that's why I chose it for these pillar holders. So I gave each of them 2 coats, like I said, of the Bohemian blue, let that dry completely, and then to seal my paint, I am using DIY's clear wax first and putting down a good layer of that with my soft brush, and then very, very gently wiping back the excess with a shop towel. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to go over both of these pillar holders with DIY's white wax. I decided that I didn't want to distress these. I couldn't imagine that you'd really be able to see the dark brown underneath this dark blue anyway. And I thought the white wax would be a nice way to bring out the detail in these pillar holders, especially since there really wasn't a lot, and also help brighten up this dark paint just a little. Now, I know you guys have heard me say a million times that I'm not a fan of brushstroke marks, and for the most part that is true. However, when I do my pillar holders, I usually try to paint them all going in one direction so that all the brushstroke marks go around the pillar holder, so that when I go back over it with a colored wax like this white wax, it kind of picks that up a little bit and gives the pillar holder a touch of texture, which I really do like. So you can see here I'm just going around the pillar holders in the same direction that I did my paint, and then I'm being very careful and wiping back the excess with that shop towel, just really gently so that not to accidentally go back down into my spray paint. I really love how these came out, and I hope you guys do too. Project 2 is this ugly orange pumpkin that I picked up a while back, and I am starting by giving this a good base coat of that same Rustoleum 2X spray in Espresso. I really like starting with a base coat on my ceramic pieces, not only because I feel like it gives the paint something to really grip to on that super slick surface, but also so that if I do go through my paint down to my base coat, it's not the ugly orange that's going to show through. Instead, it'll be the pretty brown. So then I went over it with 2 coats of Skeleton Key by DIY, which is this beautiful blue with just a touch of gray in it. And I did stipple that paint on just to add a little bit more texture to the already super textured surface. And then I gave the stem 2 coats of layered chocolate. Then it was time to seal my paint, and I am starting off with a coat of DIY's clear wax and just going over that as always with my soft bristle brush, making sure to cover every part of this little pumpkin with that. And then once that's done, wiping back the excess with a dry shop towel. Now I decided for this one to bring out all of the texture in it. I was going to go over it again with the DIY white wax. And so I loaded my brush up pretty well and then began applying that white wax to the entire pumpkin. Just again, making sure to cover the entire thing. And sometimes I would actually overload my brush just a little bit because I did want some of that white wax to stay in those details. Then I very, very lightly brushed back the excess or wiped back the excess with my dry shop towel again. And when I was done with this step, I decided I wanted to bring out the little creases in my pumpkin. And so I grabbed my DIY dark wax and a pointy little brush and very carefully just gave a little bit of shadowing to the creases of the pumpkin. I really love the look of this dark wax in these creases. I think it was the perfect way to give this pumpkin just a little bit more personality, and I think it turned out really well. It's not an ugly orange pumpkin anymore. And since I had so much fun making the last set of pumpkin blocks, I decided I needed another set. Now, honestly, I already have some blocks cut out, but I had really rounded the corners of all of them, and I was kind of afraid that the little brackets that I was going to use on the corners wouldn't mesh well. So I am squaring these off a little bit more and not rounding the corners quite as much with my sander. So I just cut them out again at 14, 11, and 8 inches. And then I'm just sanding everything smooth so that nobody will get splinters when they go to grab them. Then I went ahead and made some castings. Now, the last that I made, I used a lot of actual like antique hardware on, and to replicate those would be kind of expensive if you were doing it over and over. So I decided this would be a much more cost-effective way to really add some detail and personality to the fronts of these pumpkins without breaking the bank. So I am using 2-part casting resin. You just mix it up in even amounts and then pour it into your molds. Here's kind of what it looks like as those start to cure up. And then once they're white, you just pop them out of your mold. So now I have these beautiful little castings that I can use on my pumpkins. Now you can see this last one wasn't quite set when I took it out, and you can see it's kind of bending there. So if you wanted to use these on a curved surface, you absolutely could, but you would need to get them out of the molds pretty quickly and not let them sit around for too long. Now you can see here my boards are magically dark brown, and that is because I gave them all a coat of DIY's Dark and Decrepit liquid patina and let that dry first before I began giving them a coat of DIY's crinoline. And I am not trying to cover these completely. I wanted them to have kind of a weathered picket fence kind of look to them. So I'm doing what I would call a heavy dry brush. So it's not technically a dry brush completely, but I'm offloading quite a bit of my paint before I go over the boards with it, just so that I have quite a bit of that dark brown showing through the crinoline paint. Once I had all 3 of my boards painted and looking the way I wanted them to, I moved on to painting my castings, and I'm just giving these 2 good coats of the DIY crinoline as well. Once I was finished painting my castings, I set them aside to dry, and I moved on to sealing the paint on my boards. And for that, I'm using a coat of DIY's clear wax. So again, just going over this with a nice thin even coat of that wax on all sides, and then wiping back the excess with my dry shop towel. And then it was back to the castings and giving them a coat of the clear wax as well. Once I finally had all of my pieces painted and sealed and ready to go, it was finally time to start putting my pumpkins together. So I grabbed my Titebond quick and thick and put a thin coat on the back of my castings, and then began placing the ones I wanted on each of the boards. I did measure to make sure I had them centered as best as I possibly could, and you can see I'm using the longest casting on the longest board, and then I put the other 2 on the smaller. I let those sit and dry for a little while so that that glue could cure up before I began my next step, which was adding some DIY black wax. Now, the reason I did not go with dark wax on this was because I really wanted to kind of gray out the white just a little bit, like you'd see on an aged fence. So I'm going over the castings first with a nice coat of the black wax, and then wiping back the excess, and then around in their shadow adding a little bit more black wax, and then also to the ends I'm adding a little bit heavier coat of the wax to make the ends look kind of aged and patinaed, and then I go over the rest of the paint with just a little bit of thinned out black wax, and for that I used mineral spirits to thin my wax. I really love the way the black wax kind of made these look a bit more moody and definitely gave them patina and a lot of depth of color. So I just worked my way through all of my boards, paying special attention to the castings in particular, making sure that I really worked a good layer of that wax down into all the details, and then taking my time to wipe back as much of it as I could so that you really saw the highlights and the lowlights in all of my castings. You can see to my right, I also have my clear wax brush, because as I'm putting down my black wax, if it got to be a little too heavy or looked a little too dark or dingy, I would take my clear wax brush and go over that area to lighten things back up a little bit. I find it really is helpful to keep that clear wax brush handy whenever you're doing the colored waxes. Then it was on to adding some hardware to these. And so I bought these off of Amazon. These are a little bit smaller than the other corner protectors that I had bought, so they worked perfectly on the edges. I'm only using these particular ones on the largest of the boards. They were a little bit expensive, probably 95 cents a piece, I think. Then I used the other little corner protectors on the other 2 boards at all 4 corners, just using my needle nose pliers to hold those little bitty nails while I hammered them in. Then I decided my middle-sized block needed a more pizzazz, so I went ahead and added the larger corner protectors above and below the casting. Once I was finished with that, I wanted to kind of fill the holes in them that are made for knobs. So I grabbed out my stash of beads and I found these cute little kind of antique bronze. They really went well with the hardware already on it. And so I filled those holes with a little bit of Titebond and stuck those down. Lastly, it was time to put knobs in the top, so I'm just drilling the holes for those, adding some of that Titebond quick and thick, and then sinking those knobs down into the holes and gluing them tight. For the knobs for the two smaller blocks, I kind of had to improvise a little. Their screws have heads on them, so they wouldn't fit down into the hole I had drilled. So I'm using a two-sided screw that the threads kind of sort of fit into the knob, but it gave it so much more stability than if I had just glued the knob to the top of the block. Anyway, I absolutely love how this second set of pumpkin blocks came out. I hope you guys do too. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I think that's it from here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my projects and I hope you enjoyed the video. I have to say, I've really enjoyed creating those pumpkin block sets, and it's funny because as I'm making one, I'm already starting to plan what I would do differently the next time and the next time. So there are just so many variations you could do with them. They're a lot of fun. Anyway, if you did like my video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know what your favorite project in today's video was. Also, a quick reminder, any of the paint products you saw me use can be purchased through me at my website, and that's www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. I worked yesterday trying to make my website just a little bit more user-friendly as far as being able to find my shop and the different products that I carry, so hopefully you'll find it a little bit easier to navigate. I do carry DIY paint products as well as Sweet Pickin' Smoke paint, some recycled decoupage papers, as well as my Redesign with Prima. So please check those out there. I so appreciate it. And let's see, for Friday's video, I'm hoping to have another thrift flip for you guys, but I also did go out on Sunday for a really quick junk run just on my own. I grabbed some cute things that I want to show you, so I might incorporate that as well. We'll see. So I hope you'll join me on Friday for that, and then stay tuned, keep watching every day for the next, I think, 10 more days. I will be giving you little hints as to the Redesign with Prima new release that's coming. I can hardly wait to show it to you guys. According to the tracking, my package should be here today, so fingers crossed. I would love to be able to get a couple projects done for you guys for the reveal. Anyway, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it, and I will see you back here on Friday. Bye.